When I first locked eyes with Rick and every fucking hair on my body stood up like I'd just seen a ghost. He grinned at me across the kitchen table, all teeth and fake charm, while Mom giggled like a schoolgirl over her new boyfriend. But me? I felt it like a cold hand squeezing my gut, whispering, "Run, you idiot, run." 2 weeks later, I'm trapped in his shitty house. Clutching a glass of water, he's begging me to drink, his voice too smooth, his stare too hungry. Let me back up. My name's Emily, and when I was 14, I lived in this shitty little house with my mom and my kid brother, Jake. Life was fine. I guess Mom worked her ass off at a diner, and Jake and I just tried to stay out of trouble. But then she started dating this guy, Rick. The second I met him, I swear to God, something felt off, like deep in my bones, hair standing up on my neck off. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I fucking hated being around him. Rick was one of those guys who tried too hard. You know, the type big fake smile, loud laugh, always acting like he's your best friend even though you just met him. He'd show up with bags of cheap-ass candy from the gas station or take us to Walmart to pick out some dumb toy. Like that was supposed to make us love him. Jake didn't care he was 10 and easy to bribe with a Hot Wheels car, but me? I wasn't buying it. Every time he looked at me, I felt like he was sizing me up or some creepy shit like that. Mom thought he was great though. "Oh, Rick's so sweet, Emily," she'd say, all dreamy-eyed. "He's good to us. Give him a chance." Yeah, right? I just roll my eyes and lock myself in my room. But that gut feeling, it wouldn't go away. It was like my brain was screaming, "Run, you dumbass." Every time he came over. Things got weirder when Mom started dragging us to his place. Rick lived in this rundown house about 20 minutes away peeling paint. A yard full of junk, the kind of place you'd see in a horror movie. The first time we slept over, I noticed he had this little girl, Sophie, maybe 5 years old. She was his daughter from some ex he never talked about. Sophie was quiet, too quiet, like she was scared of her own shadow. I felt bad for her, but Rick? He acted like she was just some prop to make him look like a good dad. That first night, I caught him staring at me while I was brushing my hair in the bathroom. The door was cracked open, and I saw his reflection in the mirror just standing there watching. "You got real pretty hair, Emily," he said, all casual-like. "Boys like it when girls keep it long, you know?" I froze. What the fuck kind of thing is that to say to a 14-year-old? I mumbled something and slammed the door shut, my heart pounding. When I went to bed, I locked the door to the guest room. Next morning, he had the nerve to ask, "Why'd you lock your door? You don't trust me?" He laughed like it was a joke, but his eyes weren't laughing. They were cold as hell. Over the next few weeks, it got worse. He'd hover around me all the damn time watching me eat, asking me random questions, commenting on my clothes. Once I was wearing this old Nirvana t-shirt and he goes, "That's a cool shirt. You're growing up fast, huh?" I wanted to puke. Mom didn't see it. She was too busy giggling at his stupid jokes or thanking him for buying us pizza. Jake didn't notice either. He was glued to his handheld game. But me? I was on edge every second I was near that bastard. Then came the night I'll never forget. It was a Friday, and Mom said we were staying at Rick's again because she had an early shift the next day. I begged her to let me stay home alone. I was 14, for Christ's sake. I could handle it, but she wouldn't budge. "Stop being dramatic, Emily," she snapped. So there I was, stuck at his creepy-ass house again. Around 9 p.m., Rick knocked on the guest room door where I was reading some beat-up copy of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. "Hey, Em," he said, poking his head in. "Sophie's having trouble sleeping. Could you lie down with her for a bit? She likes you." I didn't want to, but Sophie was a sweet kid and I felt sorry for her. So I sighed and followed him to her room. Sophie's bed was this tiny little thing with a ratty blanket. I climbed in next to her and she curled up against me, her breathing all soft and shaky. Rick stood in the doorway for a minute, just watching us. "You're good with her," he said, his voice low, real natural. Then he left and I started whispering to Sophie about Hogwarts, trying to calm her down. She fell asleep pretty quick, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. About 20 minutes later, Rick came back with a glass of water. "You thirsty, Emily?" he asked, holding it out. I shook my head. I wasn't thirsty at all. But he didn't drop it. "Come on, it's hot in here. You need to stay hydrated." He kept pushing the glass toward me, his smile too wide, too fake. "Just take a sip." I don't know why, but my stomach twisted into knots. I said no again, sharper this time, but he wouldn't let up. Don't be shy, he said, stepping closer. It's just water. That's when it hit me, Harry Potter. There's this scene where Mad-Eye Moody, well, fake Moody, warns Harry never to drink anything from someone he doesn't trust because it could be spiked with potion or some shit. I know it's just a book, but right then it felt real as hell. My brain was screaming, don't fucking drink it, Emily. I grabbed the glass just to shut him up, but I didn't sip it. I held it in my lap, pretending to be distracted by Sophie. He lingered there, watching me like a hawk. You didn't drink it yet, he asked after a minute, his tone shifting sharper, impatient. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it bust out of my chest. I will in a sec, I lied, forcing a smile. He nodded, but he didn't leave. He just stood there, waiting. That's when I knew something was fucked up about water. I couldn't take it anymore. I scooped Sophie up in my arms, she was still half asleep, and mumbled something about taking her to Jake's room so we could all crash together. Rick's face twitched, like he was pissed but trying to hide it. You sure? He said. She's fine here. I didn't answer, just bolted down the hall with her, my hand shaking so bad I almost dropped her. Jake was sprawled out on the pull-out couch in the living room, snoring like a damn chainsaw. I locked the door behind me and shoved a chair under the knob for good measure. Sophie stirred a little but didn't wake up. I sat there in the dark, clutching that glass of water, staring at it like it was poison. Maybe it was. I didn't know for sure, but I wasn't about to find out. The next morning, I dumped the water down the sink when Rick wasn't looking. He didn't say anything about it, but I caught him glancing at me over breakfast, his jaw tight. I told Mom everything when we got home, how he creeped me out, how he pushed that damn water on me, how I was scared shitless. She didn't believe me. You're just jealous, she yelled, slamming a plate into the sink. Rick's good to us, and you're making shit up because you don't like him. I tried to argue, but she wouldn't listen. Jake didn't back me up either, he just shrugged and said Rick seemed fine. The only one who believed me was my old stepdad, Mike. He and Mom split years ago, but he was still around sometimes. I called him that afternoon, crying my eyes out, and he didn't even hesitate. Stay the hell away from that guy, he said. I'll talk to your mom. He did, but she told him to fuck off too. Still, Mike made sure I had his number on speed dial and told me to crash at his place if Rick ever came around again. After that night with the water, I was done. Done pretending Rick was just some annoying boyfriend of Mom's, done acting like everything was fine. I couldn't prove shit, but I knew that glass wasn't just water. Call it paranoia, call it whatever, I didn't care. I wasn't about to end up on some fucked up missing persons poster because I ignored my gut. Mom wouldn't listen though. She kept dragging us back to Rick's place every damn weekend, like nothing happened. You're overreacting, Emily, she'd say, rolling her eyes. He's not some monster. He's good to us. Good to us? Bullshit. He was good at playing her, maybe, but I saw through his fake-ass charm. Jake didn't help, he'd just shrug and say he's weird, but he buys me stuff. Great, little bro, real fucking loyal. I started keeping a notebook. Yeah, I know, sounds dramatic as hell, but I needed to track this creep. Every time Rick said something off, every time he stared too long or got too close, I wrote it down. Like the time he accidentally brushed my arm while handing me a plate at dinner, his fingers lingering way too fucking long. Or the way he'd ask about my friends. You got a boyfriend yet, Emily? Pretty girl like you must have guys lining up. It made my skin crawl, but I just mumble some excuse and get the hell out of there. One night, about 2 weeks after the water thing, shit hit the fan. Mom had to pull a double shift, so she dropped me and Jake at Rick's place again. I begged her to let us stay with Mike instead, but she snapped. Stop it, Emily. Rick's watching you tonight, end of story. I wanted to scream, but what was the point? She was too far up his ass to hear me. Rick was all smiles when we got there, like some slimy used car salesman. Hey, kiddos. Pizza's on the way, he said, ruffling Jake's hair. Jake grinned pizza was his kryptonite, but I just nodded and bolted to the guest room with my backpack. I packed a pocket knife Mike gave me years ago, just in case. It was rusty and dull as hell, but it made me feel less helpless. Around 10 p.m., I was in Sophie's room again. She'd started asking for me at bedtime, probably because I was the only one who didn't scare the shit out of her. I was reading her Charlotte's Web, doing my best to keep her calm, when Rick showed up at the door. "You too look cozy," he said, leaning against the frame. "You're like a little mom, Emily, real sweet." His voice was all syrupy, but his eyes were locked on me, not Sophie. I forced a smile and kept reading, hoping he'd fuck off. He didn't. Instead, he stepped inside and sat on the edge of the bed. Sophie tensed up. I felt her little body go stiff next to me, but she didn't say anything. "You thirsty tonight?" he asked, pulling a glass of water out of nowhere. My stomach dropped. It was like deja vu, except this time, he didn't even pretend to be casual about it. "Go on, take it." "You've been reading a while." "Nah, I'm good," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was racing. He tilted his head, that fake smile fading just a little. "Come on, Emily, don't be rude." He pushed the glass closer, and I swear I saw some tiny flicker of powder or some shit swirling in it. Maybe I imagined it, but I wasn't taking chances. "I said I'm not thirsty," I snapped, louder this time. Sophie whimpered, and Rick's face twitched. All right, he said, standing up. "No need to get pissy." He left the glass on the nightstand and walked out, but I heard his footsteps stop just outside the door. He was listening. Fucking creep. I waited until Sophie fell asleep, then grabbed the glass and tiptoed to the bathroom. I poured it down the sink, watching the water spiral away. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the damn thing. I didn't know what was in it, drugs, poison. Who the hell knows, but I wasn't about to play guinea pig for Rick's sick games. Back in Sophie's room, I locked the door and shoved her dresser against it. It wasn't much, but it'd buy me time if he tried anything. I sat there in the dark, clutching that shitty pocket knife, listening to every creak in the house. Around midnight, I heard its soft footsteps in the hall, then the doorknob jiggled. My breath caught in my throat. "Emily?" Rick's voice came through, low and smooth. "You awake?" I didn't answer. I just gripped the knife tighter, praying he'd go away. The knob jiggled again, harder this time, then stopped. After what felt like forever, I heard him walk off. I didn't sleep a wink that night. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked like him coming back. The next morning, I was a wreck. Bags under my eyes, hands still shaky, but I kept it together for Jake and Sophie. Rick acted like nothing happened, cracking jokes over cereal, asking Jake about his video games. But when he looked at me, there was this glint in his eye, like he was testing me. I didn't say shit. I just ate my Frosted Flakes and counted the minutes until Mom picked us up. When she finally showed, I dragged her into the kitchen and spilled everything: the water, the locked door, the footsteps. "He's fucking dangerous, Mom," I hissed, trying not to cry. "You've got to believe me." She just stared at me, then shook her head. "You're being ridiculous, Emily. He's not some psycho. You're just mad I'm not with Mike anymore." I wanted to scream, but she walked away, calling for Jake to get his stuff. I was out of options. That afternoon, I called Mike again. He picked up on the first ring. You okay?" I broke down, telling him everything, how Rick kept pushing that water, how he tried my door, how Mom wouldn't listen. Mike didn't say much, just, "Pack a bag. I'm coming to get you." An hour later, he pulled up in his beat-up Ford, and I ran out with my backpack. Mom yelled after me, "Where the hell are you going?" But I didn't look back. Jake stayed with her, but I couldn't. Not anymore. Mike took me to his place, a tiny apartment across town. He didn't ask a million questions, just handed me a Coke and said, "You're safe here, kid. We'll figure it out." That night, I crashed on his couch, still clutching that notebook. I edited every detail from the night before, scribbling until my hand cramped. It wasn't proof, but it was something. A week later, I decided to dig deeper. I was done waiting for Mom to wake the fuck up. I needed to know who Rick really was. Mike had an old laptop, so I started Googling. Rick Peterson didn't pull up much at first, just some random Facebook profiles and a LinkedIn page for a car salesman. But then I tried Rick Peterson criminal record, and holy shit, there it was. A mugshot from 5 years back. Some low-level assault charge in another state. The photo was grainy, but those eyes cold, dead, creepy as hell were unmistakable. I showed Mike, and he cursed under his breath. "That's him, huh?" he said. I nodded, my stomach churning. "We need to tell your mom." But when we called her, she wouldn't hear it. "That's not him," she insisted. "He told me he's never been in trouble. You're both ganging up on me." She hung up, and I just sat there numb. Days turned into weeks, and I stayed with Mike. Mom kept seeing Rick, kept taking Jake over there. I begged her to stop, but she'd just yell or cry and say I was ruining her life. I started having nightmares, Rick's face looming over me, that glass of water in his hand, Sophie screaming somewhere in the dark. I'd wake up sweating, clutching that damn knife like it was my lifeline. Then, one night, everything changed. It was about a month after I'd moved out. Mike and I were watching some shitty action movie when Mom burst through the door, her face white as a ghost. "Emily," she choked out, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're not gonna believe this." I stood up, my heart in my throat. "What?" "Rick got arrested," she said, her voice shaking. "Some girl." She said he tried to hurt her. They found stuff in his house. Drugs, cameras. "Oh God, Emily, you were right." Mom stood there in Mike's cramped living room, sobbing so hard she could barely get the words out. "They found pictures," she said, her voice breaking. "Hidden in his basement. Kids, Emily, little girls." She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I just stared at her, my whole body numb. All those months of fear, all those nights I'd felt like a crazy bitch for doubting him, it hit me like a fucking freight train. I was right. I'd been right all along. Mike put a hand on my shoulder, his jaw tight. "You okay, kid?" he asked. I nodded, but I wasn't, not really. I kept thinking about that glass of water, the way Rick's eyes glinted when he pushed it at me. What if I'd drunk it? What if I'd ended up in one of those pictures or worse? And Sophie, poor little Sophie, stuck in that house with him. My stomach churned and I bolted to the bathroom to puke. When I came back, Mom was still crying, but she looked up at me, her mascara streaking down her face. "I'm so sorry, Em," she whispered. "I should have listened. I fucked up. I didn't know what to say." Part of me wanted to scream at her, "Yeah, you did fuck up, Mom. You almost got us killed." But another part just felt empty. She'd been blind, sure, but she was my mom. I sat next to her and let her hug me, even though it felt weird as hell. The next day, Mike drove us to the police station. They arrested Rick after a neighbor's kid some brave 13-year-old girl told her parents he'd tried to lure her into his car with candy and a soda. Cops searched his place and found a stash of sedatives, a hidden camera in Sophie's room, and a locked box full of photos. Sick bastard had been at it for years, moving from town to town, playing the nice guy card. That assault charge I'd found? Just the tip of the iceberg. They took my statement about the water, the locked doors, the creepy shit he'd said. The cop, a tired-looking guy with a buzz cut, nodded like he'd heard it all before. "You're lucky, kid," he said. "Trusting your gut probably saved your ass." I didn't feel lucky. I felt like I dodged a bullet by pure dumb chance. Mom pulled Jake out of Rick's orbit that same week. She quit her job at the diner, got a gig at the police station doing admin work, ironic, right? And started therapy. Jake was pissed at first. He missed the pizza and toys. But when Mike explained what Rick really was, he shut up real quick. Sophie got taken by social services. I never saw her again, but I hope to God she's okay now. Years later, I'm 20, living on my own, still jumpy at shadows sometimes. Rick's rotting in prison got 25 years after the trial. Mom's better, but we don't talk about him much. Mike's still my rock. He checks in every week. That notebook? I burned it after the sentencing. Didn't need it anymore. Looking back, I think about that Harry Potter scene a lot. Dumb as it sounds, it saved me. That and the gut feeling I never ignored. If I ever have a kid, first thing I'll teach him? Trust yourself, even when no one else does. Hey guys, that's it for my crazy story. Hope it gave you the chills like it did me. Thanks for watching, you're the best. If you like this wild ride, smash that like button and hit subscribe. And ring the bell so you don't miss more insane tales like this. Drop a comment below, ever had a gut feeling save your ass? I want to hear it. See you in the next video, stay safe out there.